Okay, so today I will continue with the new topic, accrual accounting in public sector. Okay, so today's lecture is accrual accounting in public sector. Of course, the continuation from, I think we look at financial reporting in general, and then we look at financial reporting practice in Malaysian government as a case. Okay, there was an overview of the annual reports. So try to appreciate them, okay? Because the presentation under the cash environment, so the presentation of financial statements, so I think was discussed. Okay, how to go about to assess the level of revenues collected, assets, type of assets, and then level of liabilities and how that been presented. I think we discussed that previously in financial accounting and reporting. So now we look at accrual accounting in public sector. I think it's very obvious. Okay, let me share the slide. Okay. I think this become a topic by itself in the case of a government or public sector accounting, because there is a migration. Okay, generally, government use cash accounting. Okay, that's been the traditional mode of accounting system in public sector. But now there is a call, okay, for them to implement accrual accounting in Malaysia, as well as it is an international trend, particularly in developing countries. So I think again, numbers of countries adopting accrual accounting, I mean, has been ongoing. In the case of Malaysia, okay, by right, I think the system now is already, hopefully, I mean, by right, they should have the complete system in place. And that's one. Of course, now I think the expectation will be how this accrual accounting should be reflected in the financial statements of the government, and then definitely will be in the financial statements of Malaysian government. Okay, so for this, right, we'll look at a discussion why there is a migration to accrual accounting, okay, and then the relevant standards. I think from today we look at a general discussion on accrual accounting, and then in the next class, or possibly the next two classes, we'll discuss on the specific standards and as well as manual, provided by the accountants general on the accrual accounting. Okay, so we'll discuss that as well. All right, so that's the expectation, because the call for the government to be transparent, and then with that, they can improve the accountability. So could accrual accounting lead to greater transparency and accountability of public sector? I think these are ongoing expectation. So in a way that, because, accrual accounting is being promoted by the international bodies, okay, like IFAC, and then the commitment by the government also, because possibly it's an international trend. So, and then it's very consistent with the private sector practice as well. Okay, and then you can see that the commitment of Malaysian government through AG, Accountants General, for them to implement or to adopt accrual accounting. Okay, the adoption of accrual accounting should lead to greater transparency for the government entities in using of public funds. Some of the implications of the accrual accounting for such purpose as follow. Okay, I think just read that together, just to get an idea of it. With accrual accounting, complete financial statements for each government entity will be prepared, including the statement of financial performance, financial position, and cash flow statements. These would enable assessment of financial performance of the entity. Okay, so I think here, not only that the financial statements of the government as a whole, okay, I think we discussed on the current practice on the financial statements of Malaysian government, right? So with accrual accounting, government as a whole, okay, will have its financial statements, but then it's also expected that financial statements of each ministry and government agencies will also be provided. Okay, so in that sense, it will improve, one, definitely transparency, and for each government agency, then its performance can be assessed. Accrual accounting would enable the account for liabilities and future commitments with greater accuracy. This would improve transparency in managing public funds. Okay, enhanced monitoring of liabilities and contingent liabilities. Liabilities such as employee entitlement, environmental obligations, insurance claim obligations, expected losses under guarantee scheme, which are not typically recognized in the cash accounting environment, receive much more attention once recognized under accruals. Okay, so of course, I mean, even under the cash environment, there is an attempt, or there was an attempt, yeah, by the government to improve the reporting of liabilities. Okay, but in the case of accrual accounting, I think that will be more consistent, yeah? More systematic in that sense, because that liabilities will be presented in the financial statements, okay, in the main financial statements. With IPSAS, accounting for assets and liabilities at fair value would improve presentation of the government financial standing, I think. So you can see that similarly as the emphasis of IFRS or MFRS with fair value. So similarly, I mean, IPSAS as an offshoot of that been applied to the financial public sector accounting settings, that the emphasis on fair value. Okay, international public sector accounting standards. I think we discussed this. Applicable to all public sector entities, including national government, local government, and their component governments, but not applicable to government business entities. In the Malaysian case, of course, GLC, yeah? Government-linked companies. Okay, so I think through IPSAS FSB website, you can download your copy. I think we discussed this before, isn't it? That you can download your copy. Yes, class? Are you with me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So how many of you already downloaded the standards?
I did, sir, but I haven't read yet.
Oh, okay, good. So good start, huh? All right. So at least someone responding. I think it's good to have a copy of the standards. From time to time we can review, and then you can compare, possibly get yourself familiar, because I mean, these are all very useful later on, not only for the for the government, for the private sector, okay, for the listed companies, but I think more jobs can be expected for valuations and measurement, recognitions, disclosures for the government entities, okay, with this accrual. Okay, now the relevant standards under IPSAS, I just list this, for appreciation. As I mentioned, you can download this. Okay, so you can see clearly from here that the numbering of the standards. Okay, then later on when we discuss on the MPSAS, right? So I think the numbering, they just follow the same numbering as well. Okay, so for instance, like IPSAS 17 is on PPE, so you can expect that MPSAS 17 should also be PPE. Okay, IPSAS 23 on revenue from non-exchange transactions. So later on we can see that MPSAS 23, okay, will also be revenue from non-exchange transactions as an example. Okay. Right, now we move on to accrual accounting, the Malaysian public sector. Okay, it's part of public sector reforms, new economic model. And then there was a strategic reform initiative, public finance lab, okay, for them to implement accrual accounting. Okay, so But of course, I mean, the initiation to adopt accrual accounting has been, I think, for the past 10 years. Not only from the time of the current government and the PH, even before PH, the Datuk Seri Najib, even before that, from the time of Pak Lah as a Prime Minister. Okay, during that time, the trigger point to implement accrual accounting was due to counterfeit checks that were identified because there was false claims using counterfeit checks worth of, I think, hundreds of, it's a big sum of money. Okay, and then as a quick response of that, the government planned to implement accrual accounting. Okay, and then they engaged, okay, from the news, okay, they clearly mentioned that they engaged one of the big four firms, okay, to advise the government to implement accrual accounting. Even then, at that time, there was you mentioned in the news, it's around 100 million ringgit, okay, was allocated for the implementation of accrual accounting. So the preparation to implement accrual accounting has been there. So okay, during the time of Pak Lah time, okay, now but the extent of the implementation that is more advanced, and now I think they already have the system, and now we are waiting for the reports at the government level to use accrual accounting. Okay. Benefits of accrual accounting provide a more comprehensive and accurate picture of government financial position. Okay, because they will be presented in the same financial statements. Okay, asset, liabilities, and equity. Enhance the government transparency and accountability in its financial management and accounting system. Improve the government financial management and accounting system through good governance and thus resulting value for money. Promote efficiency and effectiveness of the government organizations by providing complete and comprehensive performance report and financial statements. Provide better guidance for prudent financial management. I think by itself, presenting assets and the liabilities, okay, in the same financial statement, okay, it provides, incentive and also care and accountability for the civil service managers. Okay, so if you look at the under cash system, cash environment, many of the assets are not accounted for. If you look at capital expenditures, buildings, for instance, renovation, okay, under capital under cash environment, cash accounting, okay, it's not reported as asset. But then now through accrual accounting, so all those capital expenditures will be accounted as assets. Okay, so in that sense, it will give motivation and more incentive for the civil servant if they want to invest, okay, or if they want to spend. They should spend in line with the objective of the organizations, okay, with the objective of organizations, and the type of assets that they're going to invest. So it should be in line with the objective organizations, okay. So I think that definitely that will have an impact, okay, if the assets, types of asset, proper disclosure, then that will improve definitely, okay. As opposed, because definitely the expenditures, if it is flushed out through financial performance as expenditures, okay, it's not as detailed, have no direct impact if it is classified as assets, okay, where it will be amortized or depreciated over the years, then the type of assets, okay. Of course, the expectation will be, depending on the operation of the organizations, okay, what type of class of assets should be more than others, okay. These are, possible analysis that can be undertaken. Right, with that, definitely, you can somehow make that assessment, with government expenditures, okay, will that be a value for money or otherwise? Some indications, or we can do that level of analysis, okay. I think it will provide that opportunities. Whereas in the for the external users, I think for internal users, definitely they have all the details, but for the external users, they need all those information. That can be, of course, the disclosure. Then it can be assessed properly. Okay. Right. Okay. So now these are, I think, the strategies to implement accrual accounting. Right. So you can see that. So what are the factors need to be considered to put them in place? Okay. Right. First, you look at the standard. There are 4 factors here. One is standard and policies. The other, law and procedures, process and technology, and human resource. So you can see that all these are needed to implement accrual accounting. Okay, with regards to standard and policies, they must have the standards. Of course, so where they get the standards, so that's basically the adoption of IPSAS and to issue the standards under IPSAS. Okay, and then developing accrual accounting policies, I think from time to time, definitely the AG, I think at both level, accountants general, as well as the reporting entity, I think they should have that accounting policies. Okay. Law and procedures, okay, because for the government, for government agencies to issue or to prepare their accounts under accrual accounting, of course, they must have the mandates, right? So that's one of the requirements for law and procedures. Review and propose amendments to Financial Procedures Act 1957 and relevant act together with the Attorney General. The law is to be passed at the Parliament for its full implementation, including reporting of public accounts, because now public accounts should be presented under accrual accounting. So there's definitely, I mean, the bill been drafted by the AG, okay, and then should be presented and passed by the Parliament. I think they are doing that by right. The law should have been passed already. Yeah. Okay. With regards to human resource, change management, development of human capital, engagement of accounting officers in accrual accounting implementation. Okay. So in other words, they also need accountants, public sector accountants who are imbued or have that competencies. Okay, to handle accounts under accrual accounting environment. Process and technology, undertaking gap analysis between cash accounting and accrual accounting. Definitely, they need to upgrade to make sure that the accounting system can meet the requirements of accrual accounting. Okay, with all the assets that is required, all the type of liabilities that are required, as also impairments and others that is required by the accrual accounting under EPSAS, then of course the system should support. Design and develop an accounting system for accrual accounting. Okay, any question? Class, do you follow?
Yes, sir. Follow, sir.
Okay. Right, next we move to the MPSAS. Okay, 87 students present. So I assume many of you are sharing laptops, or simply missing in action. So I lost another 13 students, 18 students. So where are they? Okay, continue with MPSAS. MPSAS are accrual basis accounting standard issued by AG. Of course, drawn from the IPSAS. Okay, so you can see that there was an agreement with IFAC to adopt IPSAS in 2013. The only divergence when IPSAS contradict with local legislations. In that situation, local legislation shall prevail. Okay, so take note of that. It's quite there's condition with the IPSAS. Okay, where local legislation is given priority over the standards. I think in the private sector, generally on the accounting and reporting, financial reporting, I think that would be left to the accounting standards. Okay, and PSAS is the accounting standard that has been observed by the public sector accounting entities in Malaysia other than government business enterprise. Okay, I think very consistent with what has been promoted by IPSAS, that MPSAS is for government entities other than the GLCs, government linked companies. What happened to government linked companies? What will be their guidance to prepare the accounts for government linked companies? Class? For government entities, generally they follow MPSAS, but for government business entities or government-linked companies, so which guidance or which accounting standard they should follow? Anyone? Are you with me?
Thinking, sir, thinking.
Or thinking? Oh, thinking. All right.
MFRS.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they should adopt MFRS. Okay, so I think in the government also there are different level of government entities, and definitely they have JLCs. Even JLCs are basically their preference will be MFRS. Okay, for companies, I think that's their commitment or obligations that they try to when they want to show that they should adopt the best standards, the best accounting standards. So in this case, definitely MFRS. Okay, that's for GLC. Yeah, but for government other than GLC, they should use MPSAS. Okay. But of course, I mean, diversion we can be expected because now it's transition. Because some of the statutory bodies they also use AMPERS. Okay, beside they may also use other accounting the available the current practice of accounting standard SAGA, for instance, guidelines that is provided by the AG. Okay, so that would be in line. Right now we look at the process of drafting MPSAS provided by Accountants General, A&M is Accountant Negara Malaysia. So I think the initial study to adopt MPSAS, then they have this Government Accounting Standard Advisory Committee, right? And then submitted to Jawatan Kuasa Pemandu Perakaunan Accrual. Okay, so they have steering committee for accrual accounting. Then of course you can see that that the final approval in terms of adoption of the standards is by IFAC. Okay, so I think you can see that close monitoring by IFAC with the adoption of IPSAS, of course, in Malaysia, been labeled as MPSAS. Okay, conceptual framework of accrual accounting. Okay, is presented in Appendix A, MPSAS 1. Okay, so the guidance. These are qualitative characteristics of the accounting information. So there are, I think they split the characteristics. Fundamental as well as enhancing, qualitative characteristics. Okay, the fundamental including relevance, materiality, and faithful presentation, whereas enhancing characteristics including comparability, verifiability, timeliness, and understandability. Okay, all this should be translated into accounting standards, and even when you prepare accounts, this should be the guiding principles. Okay, so that all these, why they have these qualitative characteristics. So what is the fundamental principle in financial reporting class? By adhering to all these characteristics, so basically the accountants should prepare what kind of information, what kind of accounting information?
True and fair information.
Yes. What kind of accounting information?
True and fair financial statement.
True and fair view. Okay. All right. And I think the threshold is always useful information. So these are the characteristics to provide useful information. Okay. Right. I think of course, generally, even if you look at accountants in practice, how they definitely one of them is true and fair view presentation or faithful presentation. So by complying to the standards, okay, by complying to the standards, I think that's the current dominance understanding of how you're going to, I mean, your professional judgments and in developing, in preparing financial statements or financial information is basically by complying to the standards, okay. I think it depends on, I think generally that's the understanding, okay. Nowadays, okay, I think I talked to a few partners. I think that's the answer that they give. So you can see that complying to the standards, okay, is the main thing. Because I think what happened possibly because when the environment become more, there's a lot of litigations, and adhering to the standards possibly is one of the safety net to cover yourself or something. But at the end, anyway, just for discussion purposes, professional judgment. Sometimes there are also cases where accounting standard is not sufficient to provide guidance. Okay, so your expertise, experience, and then your professional judgment should also be used to exercise if the standards is good enough to guide. Okay, so that's why I think the continuous through professional memberships, okay, and continuous engagement with the standard setters, or maybe through the professional body. If the accounting standard cannot match with the transactions or with the accounts that with the financial issues that faced by the entities, then this kind of engagement can provide more guidance. They should provide more guidance how to account for it, rather than just blind compliance. Okay. Right. So scope of implementation and status of adoption of PSAS, you can see, yeah. So it's not an outright adoption for the whole, because I think it takes time for them to review and then to adopt from the MPSAS to so from IPSAS to MPSAS. Okay. So you can expect that it take in stages from 2013. You can see that from MPSAS 1, okay, 2, 3, okay, and 24. Then 2014, okay, MPSAS 14, 19, and up to 31. Then 2015, I think you can see that some of the items are, I think, depending also on the issuance of the new standards by IPSAS, okay. And 2016, okay, up to 2016. I think from time to time also there is an improvement and updates, okay, on the standards. And but in 2016 they also issue the standard showing MPSAS 33, first time adoption of accrual basis for the government. So they provide guidance, okay, how to implement, what are the strategies for them to be able to migrate from cash accounting to accrual accounting. Right, MPSAS and policy. So MPSAS as a standard, okay, it covers definition, recognition, measurement, and disclosure. Okay, accounting policies, okay, to provide basis of preparing the financial statements, rules and practices for them to prepare the financial statements. I think with these two, become the guidance. And definitely these are all being disclosed together in the notes to the accounts. Right, now we move to a discussion on transition from cash to accrual. In Malaysia, accrual transition is managed by Accrual Accounting Steering Committee. It's discussed just now. Okay. Provisions for accrual accounting transition in MPSAS provide government agency with ample time to get accrual accounting system ready. Okay. So MPSAS 33, it's a guidance. Transition refers to the 3-year period when government adopts one or more exemptions in MPSAS 33 prior to full compliance with MPSAS. Okay, so what are the items? I think we just discussed the main one. A first-time adopter shall prepare and present an opening statement of financial position at the date of adoption of MPSAS. This is the starting point for its accounting in accordance with accrual basis MPSAS. So in other words, so all these accounts, they need an opening balance. They need an opening balance. So with that, there must be initial financial statements. Okay. I think if you think about, I mean, the easy one definitely, let's say PPE. Okay. So what would be the opening balance of the PPE? Okay, and from there, then you know, all the transactions can be accounted under accrual accounting. On the date of adoption of accrual basis MPSAS, the first-time adopter shall apply the requirements of the MPSAS retrospectively, except if required or otherwise permitted in MPSAS. First-time adopters' estimates in accordance with MPSAS as at the date of adoption of MPSAS shall be consistent with estimates made in accordance with the previous basis of accounting, unless there is objective evidence that those estimates were inconsistent with the requirement in the MPSAS. Okay, these are, I think, sometimes also reflect the exemptions rather than a full accrual accounting, because of sometimes there is a difficulty, okay, for valuation in others, okay, for certain types of items, balance sheet items or income statement, then there is a requirement for exemptions. Right. You can see that exemption affecting fair presentation and compliance. Recognition and or measurement of the following assets or liabilities: investment properties, PPE, defined benefit plan, biological asset, agricultural produce, intangible assets, and financial instruments. I think possibly these are the assets that require more time for the government to prepare or finalize the accounting standards. And also time needed to prepare for the to develop the opening balance, for instance, like PPE. These assets and liabilities can be recognized for reporting period within 3 years following the date of adoption. Okay, so you can see that ample time is given for the government agencies to comply. Service concession asset and related liabilities will not be accounted until MPSAS 32 is adopted. Okay, so this is an example. Right, and recognition or measurement of non-exchange revenue. Changes in accounting policy can be recognized on a class-by-class basis within 3 years following the date of adoption. Okay, other borrowing costs are expense off. Allowed alternative treatment of capital interest is not adopted. Okay, so these are exemptions. Okay, leases, finance lease, asset and related liability will not be accounted under MPSAS 13. Okay, contingencies, liability relating to relevant asset can be recognized subject to the earlier of asset being recognized or expiry of 3 years following the date of adoption, including related party disclosures, disclosure of related party relationship, transaction and information. What key management personnel can be disclosed within 3 years following the date of adoption. So I think you can expect that now, you know, it's more than 3 years. So all these very important information, like related party disclosures, so we can expect that should be there in the annual reports. Right, exemptions not affecting fair presentation and compliance. Okay, date at which cost can be determined. Transitional exemption, fair value as deemed cost is determined at any date during the 3-year transitional period. Okay, so once they can determine the fair value, so they can put that in account. Measurement of asset, inventory, investment property, PPE, intangible asset, financial instrument, and service concession asset. Fair value as deemed cost applied at the date of adoption, where historical cost is not available. Service concession asset and liability will not be accounted under MPSAS 32. Okay, finance lease, asset and liabilities will not be accounted until MPSAS 13 is adopted. So I think they give the time because if you look at concession assets, only will be accounted under MPSAS 32. Measurement of asset acquired through non-exchange transactions. Fair value as deemed cost applied at date of adoption, where historical cost information is not available. Okay, exemptions not affecting fair presentation and compliance. Okay, investment fair value as deemed cost at date of adoption, where historical cost is not available. Okay, using a fair value. I think you can see that the use of fair value. Right, and comparative information, because of exemptions, so they don't have to provide. So all these are basically not relevant. Okay, now we move on to they provide scenarios for first-time adoption of MPSAS. Scenario A, recognition of asset as opening balance on first adoption during transitional period. Okay, I think this is very good because it gives you very clear transactions and how to account for it. Total PPE consisting of two separate assets, asset A and B, are recognized as opening balance during the transition period from cash accounting to accrual accounting. Asset A amounts to 150,000 is purchased by a responsibility center financed through general fund. Okay, so you can see this, the use of fund accounting. Asset B amounts to 75,000 is financed through a government trust account. Okay, so from that point, you can expect, okay, fund will be the reporting entity. Okay, so there will be general fund and trust fund. So which asset should be reported under which fund? Okay, so from here, definitely asset A will be reported under general fund. Asset B will be reported under a government trust account. Asset A has an opening gross balance of 150,000 and accumulated depreciation of 50,000. Asset B has an opening gross balance of 75,000 and accumulated depreciation of 35,000. So how to account for it? Okay, these are basically the accounting entries. So under general fund, okay, they provide debit PPE and credit accumulated depreciation as well as I think the book value. But if you look at the credit there, one, they credit accumulated depreciation, but they also credit equity item, isn't it? Accumulated surplus or deficit dash general fund. That is an equity item. Okay, accumulated surplus sounds like retained earnings. I think we discussed that when we discussed fund accounting. So that's for general fund. For government trust account, debit PPE 75,000, credit accumulated depreciation, and basically the balancing figure will be credited to accumulated surplus or deficit account under the government trust account. Okay, so you can see that clearly the transactions or the item for each fund will be recorded in the separate book. For asset that is being assigned to general fund will be accounted under the accounting book of general fund. Okay, and asset assigned to basically the asset B, isn't it? Assigned to government trust account will be accounted under government trust account book. Okay, so from there, basically the coding must be important to make sure that which fund that they belong to clearly identified. Okay, so in that sense, the financial statement of general fund can be prepared. Financial statement for government trust account can also be prepared. Okay, right. So as an example, now we will look at selected MPSAS. Okay, I think this is what we'll cover for this class: MPSAS 1, MPSAS 9, 17, MPSAS 23, 24, and 32. Okay, for this semester. And I think for today's class, I think we will cover MPSAS 1 and MPSAS 9. Okay, the rest we'll cover in the next class. Okay, MPSAS 1, presentation of financial statements, reporting entity, federal government ministries other than government business enterprises. So that's the expectation. Okay, components, statement of financial position, financial performance, statement of changes in net asset and equity, cash flow statement. Then when the entity make publicly available its approved budget, so a comparison of budget will also be provided, the budget information, budget and actual. Then the notes. Okay, the structure of accounts, this is what will be expected. Still, I think using fund accounting. So we have a consolidated fund, and then a consolidated revenue account, loan account, as well as other balance under trust accounts. Right. Okay. Right. I think you can look. You can find this in the MP-1. Okay. The presentation. I think if you look at the presentation, it's very similar to now it's this is what should be there as a statement of financial position. Okay, current assets, current liability, non-current assets, then liabilities, current liabilities and non-current liabilities. Okay, more important, if you look at the equity, the equity is they have capital contributed by other government agencies. These are generally, and then accumulated surplus and reserve. Okay, on top of that, they also have government trust accounts. Okay, in this example, they also provide minority interest in the standard. So in other words, if they combine, a business type, then of course you have minority interest, right? Right, but so you can see this under the guidance of the accounting manual under Malaysian for the as provided by the AG. So the equity section should be presented as follows. Okay, for this statement of financial position, accumulated surplus or deficit of general funds. And then they also have accumulated surplus or deficit of government trust account. Okay, so will be accounted separately, and then with other reserves. Okay, so these two general fund, you can expect, of course, government trust account. Because government as a trustee, so that's why they have to account it for it separately, because all these assets are basically belong to the trust. The government as a trustee, okay. So unlike for general fund, so the government can use have more flexibilities to use them, okay. So these are the available money, public money that can be used, okay, for other, for the new projects by the government. I think when you look at the entity, the equity items, okay, like the accumulated surplus or deficit of general funds and trust accounts. So I think the next thing that you can do, you can see that these are the available, the public money is that still available for government to use. Okay, so these are the basically the how this should be presented. Right, so I think kind of expected. So you can see that all once is the asset being recognized. Okay, other than they recognize the liability, so the rest are all basically will be credited under the accumulated surplus. Either it is under general fund or trust account. Right, now we move on to statement of financial performance. Okay, you can expect that the revenue. So you can see the items for the revenue: tax, fee, fines, penalty, revenue from exchange transactions, transfer from other governments, and other revenues. Okay, so revenue from non-exchange transactions and revenue from exchange transactions. So these are identified separately as well as transfer. So look at expenses, general public service, defense. I think they use by function. If you look at the top there, okay, expense by function. So that's why you can see that it's like by sector. Defense, public order, education, health, social protection, okay, housing. So by function, you can tell these are the money that been allocated for all these activities, right? They generate revenue, and then how they use the revenue, the public money to support the government activities. So basically the expenses reflecting the sectors, the focus of the government. Right, and then this is by nature, okay, by nature of the expenses. So if you look at expense, wages, salary, grants, supply and consumable, depreciation, impairment, okay. So I think, of course, both can provide some understanding, okay. So I think if you look at the previously, then you can tell which sector are more important than the other, right? But if you look at the nature, then you can see that how much being paid for wages of the civil servants. Some of it are basically non-cash. If you look at depreciation and impairments, okay, so that will provide more understandings. Right, and then now these are MPSAs related to structure and size of public sector organizations, including MPSAs 34 and 35 regarding the console, MPSAs 36, investment in associate and joint ventures, and MPSAs 37, joint arrangement. I just highlight this, but no specific discussion of the details of the standard, because I think you learn this in other courses as well. Okay, I think if you look at console, for instance, I would believe that it will have same accounting steps or procedures, eliminations, console. Okay, if it is there's an inter organization that require eliminations, like the intercompany or inter-entity transactions. So all this need to be identified. Okay. Opening balance strategy. Okay, I think as mentioned here earlier, one of the key areas, a key strategy to migrate from accrual accounting, from cash accounting to accrual accounting, is to develop the opening balance of the accounts. Okay, so what are the challenges? Key challenges of data collection. First is identification of assets. Okay, so there are so many assets, but in government by right, they should have fixed asset register. Okay, definitely they should have fixed asset register, because fixed asset register is required under the procedures, the financial procedures. Okay, but the issue is they may not have the cost of those assets. Okay, the historical cost of those assets, because it's not their practice to capitalize all these assets. Because once they under the cash accounting, if they have buildings, okay, motor vehicles, whatever, so all these are basically as considered or recognized as expenditures. Data availability and completeness. Okay, definitely, if it is a new assets, that's quite straightforward, because they still have the source documents. Those assets are, beyond 7 years. I think government will keep the records for 7 years under statute of limitations. But those assets which is beyond 7 years, okay, so how to identify them? Okay, they're definitely challenging. If they have a fair value or market value, then definitely they can use valuation services, okay, to determine the value. Measurement and valuation of assets, number of stakeholders involved, legal and beneficial owner of asset can be an issue as well. Okay, they may use the asset, get the economic benefits. Okay, and for them, definitely that can trigger the recognition. But who's the owner of the asset? Okay, existence of assets. Okay, so it is in the fixed asset register. All these assets, they physically exist. Okay, so these are challenges being highlighted in the report. If you, these are basically report by the accountants general. So understatement of assets, same assets taken by few parties, okay, can happen. Multiple agencies have claims on the same asset, because simply they share the buildings, okay, and maybe the current practice of sharing the use of assets. Failure in obtaining the correct opening balance in time for the transitional period. These are challenges, but doesn't mean that it cannot be resolved. Okay, the important thing is not to stop questioning, by Albert Einstein. Right? I think that's the final remark. All right, any questions with regards to accrual accounting in public sector? Around 50 minutes of 40 minutes. I think it's okay. Any question, class? 86 students. Okay, so if no questions, wow, I think you have a good time, have your Eid in your hometown, except for those who live in KL and international students. Anyway, I think I wish through my message, the Hari Raya message. So I take also this opportunity. I think it's not too late, because in Malaysia we have Eid for 1 month. Of course, I mean, with due respect, I think having said that, we also have our brothers and sisters in Palestine. Okay, now they face big problems. So I think you make dua for them, right? I think that's the most at this point we can do. At least we have that sympathy with them. Hopefully whatever they face can be resolved soon. Of course, I mean, living in this country very peacefully, we should also be grateful for that. Right, if no question, then I will stop recording. So, and then I think there will be groups would like to have consultation after this. You can stay back. So with that, I will end this with wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.